What can we learn from the trolley problem? Practical ethics. I was inspired to do this video and other videos on ethics by Malay's speech on ethics in government. The trolley problem is a hypothetical problem in ethics created by philosopher Philippa Foot in the 1960s. It supposedly lays out a number of ethical dilemmas that are impossible to solve. And for some reason, academic philosophers and the popular culture considers this a profound ethical problem that can teach us a lot about ethics. I thought it would be interesting and instructive to take a look at 5 major ethical philosophies and see how they would handle the trolley problem. The 5 ethical philosophies that I'm planning to examine are Plato and Aristotle's ethics of virtues and vices, altruism, utilitarianism, deontology through the 10 Commandments, and rational selfishness. Before we get started, let's take a look at this video's description of the trolley problem.
Imagine this. You are standing near a railway track. Suddenly, you see a runaway train hurtling down the tracks. Even worse, there are 5 people tied to the track ahead. They are doomed. But wait, there's a lever. You can pull it to divert the train onto a side track. This will save the 5 people. There's a catch though. 1 person is tied to the side track. What do? Do you sacrifice 1 to save 5 or do nothing and let fate take its course? This, my friends, is the essence of the trolley problem.
Before we get started, it's important to note that all these different ethical philosophies don't even agree on the definition of what ethics is. So let's take a quick look at what the definition of ethics is according to each of these ethical philosophies. Plato and Aristotle both defined ethics as the study of those habits that improve the quality of our life. Auguste Comte, who first proposed altruism, defined ethics as a system of moral principles and values that guide human behavior and social interactions. Jeremy Bentham, who first proposed utilitarianism, defined ethics as the moral principles based on the principle of utility, which sounds pretty circular to me. Deontology, which I'm using the 10 Commandments as an example, defines ethics as acting in accordance with God's commandments. Rational selfishness, which is best described by Ayn Rand, defines ethics as a code of values to guide man's choices and actions, the choices and actions that determine the purpose and course of his life. With that background, let's look at how Plato and Aristotle's ethics would have analyzed the trolley problem. Both of them said that ethics is about living the good life. I'm not sure that the trolley problem has anything to do with living the good life, so I'm not sure they'd consider this an ethical problem. But ignoring this, they both end up with a list of virtues and vices. I'll just examine Plato's because they're similar and Plato's is shorter than Aristotle's. Plato's first virtue is wisdom. I'm sure that you could make some anachronistic argument about how solving the trolley problem shows wisdom or is wisdom. But if you remember, the goal of ethics according to Aristotle and Plato is to be able to live the good life. I'm not sure how solving this absurd problem would help you live the good life. I think the same can be said for all other virtues that Plato lists. For instance, courage, temperance, and justice. I don't see how solving this problem helps you live the good life in any of these aspects. Plato's 4 vices are ignorance, cowardice, intemperance, and injustice. You need to avoid these vices in order to live the good life, according to Plato. I don't see how any of these could apply to solving the trolley problem. As a result, I think Plato and Aristotle's list of virtues and vices shows that the trolley problem has no ethical meaning at all. Turning to altruism, the whole point of altruism is to live for others. That's what defines being ethical. I don't know how deciding which group to sacrifice, the 5 people or the single person, has anything to do with living for others. If you were truly altruistic, you should find some way to sacrifice your life to save all these other people's lives. I don't think there's anything in altruism that can tell us how to solve the trolley problem. And perhaps the point is that it's not a real ethical problem. Next, let's look at utilitarianism. Utilitarianism was first proposed by an English philosopher. Not surprisingly, Philippa Foot is an English philosopher. And this problem does seem to point out some of the absurdities of utilitarianism. Under utilitarianism, you would definitely pull the switch to kill one person instead of 5, because this would maximize the happiness in the world and reduce the sadness or suffering in the world. If we examine the trolley problem in terms of the 10 Commandments or deontology, I don't think it helps us make a decision at all, because the 10 Commandments are 10 things that we should never do. It doesn't tell you whether you should do anything specific, so it's also not helpful in solving the trolley problem. Under rational selfishness, your standard of value is your own life. That's what's required for your survival. Since humans are rational animals, reason is one of your ultimate values. I think a rational person would ask all sorts of questions why this problem was being presented to you in the first place. I'm not sure solving the trolley problem will help you with any of your other ethical decisions. For instance, would it guide your choices in whether you should take a COVID vaccine, which you know is flawed, could kill you or maim you? What if you'll lose your job if you don't take the vaccine? I don't see how the trolley problem applies to this ethical issue at all, or informs it in any way. Does it help you decide if it's okay to lie in order to get a woman to love you? Does it help you decide if something is okay if the group all agrees to it? For instance, if we all agree that everyone should be forced to take the COVID shot, does that make it ethical? What if we all agree that certain people should be slaves? Does that make it ethical? The trolley problem doesn't help solve any practical ethical dilemmas. Ayn Rand warned about ethical problems based on catastrophe scenarios. The problem is, of course, this has almost nothing to do with real life. If we examine the trolley problem, there are all sorts of real-life questions that arise. For instance, how do you know that changing the lever will switch the train tracks? Why are you there in the first place? Why are these people tied to the train tracks? How is it that you can see the 5 people are tied to the train tracks, and the other track shows just one person tied to it? Who are the people tied to the train tracks? Why are they tied to the train tracks? Without knowing the answers to these questions, it's absolutely impossible to make a rational ethical decision under any of these ethical theories except maybe utilitarianism. And the next part of the trolley problem shows the absurdity of utilitarianism. The next part of the problem changes the hypothetical to you standing on a bridge next to a fat man, and somehow pushing this fat man off the bridge in front of the train will result in saving those 5 people's lives tied to the train track. It demonstrates the absurdity of utilitarianism. It shows that under utilitarianism, pushing the fat man is the same thing as diverting the train to just kill one person to save the lives of 5 people. Of course, this is not the same. In one case, the fat man was innocently standing on the bridge and not a part of the problem until you push them. In the other case, the person is already tied to the railroad tracks. Under rational selfishness, or any rational ethical system, the fat man is completely innocent. There's no reason to put him in harm's way or to sacrifice his life. Any ethical system that suggests it's okay to sacrifice someone's life is the ethics of collectivism and slavery. Here's another variation on the question.
How many criminals would you sacrifice to save a Nobel Peace Prize winner?
In this variation, the fact that the one person is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, the other side is 5 criminals, is supposed to influence your decision, meaning that some lives are worth more than other lives. I don't see that this would help you in any way in real life make an ethical decision. It is never ethical to treat someone as a sacrificial animal. The next variation on the problem has to do with 5 people who need 5 organs to live, and another person has the 5 needed organs. Can you sacrifice one person to save 5 again?
A transplant surgeon has 5 patients who each need a different organ to keep living. Sadly, there are no healthy organs available. Suddenly, a random healthy guy comes in for a random checkup. This guy could technically provide all the 5 required organs. Should the surgeon knock him out and steal his organs to save the 5 patients? Again, this one is also mathematically equivalent to saving 5 lives for the price of 1.
This variation is supposed to teach us about, for instance, the ethics of a medical triage situation, where the medical team cannot treat all the people and keep them all alive. The first thing to point out is that under rational selfishness, a surgeon or the medical team has no obligation to help them or provide care. Just because you have a certain skill does not mean you're a sacrificial animal. Overall, it's clear that this trolley problem has very little to do with real-life problems and ethics. So why do academic philosophers find this such a profound question? I think it says more about the academic philosophers than it does about ethics. What this problem does is trivialize ethics by putting it in a situation that has very little relevance to most people's lives. And I think the intent is to trivialize and confuse people on ethical questions, not to help guide them in any useful way. It's a nihilistic point of view designed to undermine ethics and the study of philosophy. I would say that this so-called ethical hypothetical is not only not useful, it's actually evil, designed to undermine people's ability to reason. Long live freedom, damn it.